also to minimize the impact from heavy traffic. It took us a bit of time to find out the best method here. And we know with this increasing working width, we are challenged that we now have a neighbor farm where he says that when this one is worn out, we'll be challenged because now more or less all neighbors are working at 36 meters. So for us to remake our system is a bit harder, as we can't just pull out the berries and replant them. So we might need to do something over time to have more control of the machinery. But for us, the use of the different machinery have been an important part of how we designed the system. The other one, as informed earlier, that's also how we can do the combining. We started with this 40 feet combiner that would fit basically for 9 meters working width. Today we have our own combine harvester. We bought an elder or an old combine harvester so that it fitted with our system, but it enabled us to actually run with a small header of only 16 feet, so that fits for this bed of 3 meter. And as not all crops are at the time of harvest are precisely where you want to, some of them are tilting over. So that's actually why we have this 16 feet header, because that gives us a bit more than a 4 meter header, so that even if the oats is tilted to one side or another, we can still pick it up with the width of the header. So the header is actually going more or less within centimeters of the berry bushes on either side when we do the harvest. The thing that was very much, I speeded it up a bit so we can also keep the time, but I would very much also like to give possibilities for questions or comments from the audience. Thank you.
It's not.
I can repeat the question now.
So you will need to repeat the questions.
Yeah. So the question is, when doing mechanical weeding, and when I use the phrase that only doing it when the conditions is right, that's really where, as a farmer, your local understanding of your soil comes in. Because I can go and do a weeding, and if the weather forecast for the next 2-3 days is with moist weather, limited sun, even though I try to pull up the roots of a grass weed, it won't die because it has to dry out. So I need to know that in the next 2 days there will be sufficient dry conditions, sun or wind conditions, that will dry out the roots that's been exposed. Because if it's just 2-3 days, it will actually give the time. So even though the plant is on top of the soil, it could start resetting the roots. It is also a condition that I would like to have not the wet conditions up to the weeding, because pulling the tine through the soil, the optimal is that I pull out the weed, and with the small movement, then you basically shake off the soil from the roots so that it also dries out faster. Because if I'm doing the weeding in wet conditions, I might pull wet soils at the same time. So I might move the weed, but I won't kill the weed. So that's why I'm trying that whenever I have this days of dry weather up to and after, and especially good windy conditions, so it will dry out fast. That's where we try to do the weeding. But as you know, the climate here in Scandinavia, it can be hard even during spring to find 5 days in a row with that. And that's really where having the robot for us is important, because that means as soon as we can see the conditions right, then we can send the robot to the field and then do its work whenever we think it's the optimal conditions. Oh, yeah. Good. There's a question from the chat on animals who benefit from the grass strips. Yes, the grass that we grow today is partly used for the green manure, but in the areas where we have best control of the weeds, we also use it for horse feed. We have only limited animals on the farm as horses for hobby, so that's a minimum part. But we have in the good years also been able to sell the grass as organic crops. From a biodiversity perspective in this project, and that's really where we are looking very much forward to the coming years. We know and we can see the first fields established with the strip cropping. We see a much higher intensity and diversity of small insects. But from, I would say, as our family kind of like with the love for nature and seeing that, we have a lot of also larger animals, hares, pheasants, foxes, and most recently also wolves as part of what we see on our fields. There's no doubt with pheasants and hares is very dominant. They really like the berry bushes for hiding in. So that gives us also maybe a less financial beneficial biodiversity right now, but from a being in the environment in the local, that gives us a lot of value in the daily life to see that you actually have this kind of like oasis in the middle of fields of monoculture winter weeds where you see very limited wildlife. Then a question if the grass strips used for mulching, and today and until today we've used the grass strip whether it's been mulched where it is at, where it's been grown, to add so the grass strips next to the berry bushes, and then in the rotation we mulch the grass strips. We will actually start experimenting next year. We've just finished constructing an old tractor pull chopper so that we can actually harvest the grass and throw it in different directions. So we will experiment harvesting grass from the annual grown strips and then throw it next to the berries, because for us the main income comes from the berries. So the more crop we can add to that, so that we have one field where we'll start experimenting in the coming season where we will grow red clover, which we will harvest and mulch, throw to the berry bushes and then mulch next to the berry bushes. Then there's a question, have you any strategic consideration in using plant species that influence the nutrient status in the soil, making phosphorus more available? Yes, there's no doubt when we look at nutrient balance as an organic farmer and also with basically producing fresh fruit, we are limited in the time of the year where we can do the animal fertilizing. We are always limited in we can't change the composition of the slurry. So this is something we will continuously need to consider to see how we can maintain a good balance for the cropping in the future. We have, I would call it, little experiences today. Can allow her in. We have little experiences today, but we hope that this will be an important part in the future also to keep a resilient system. Then it's a question on creeping thistles and other weed species as challenges. The creeping thistle is one, and then the blackgrass is the other one. Some fields are very dominant with the thistles, and of course, as a root weed of that kind, that's also where we really need to be over them. And the challenging part is that the blackgrass we can stress during spring when also the cereals are small, but the thistles are challenging us because they really grow during midsummer where we are trying to minimize our intensity. So the thistle right now is the one where we're really focused in trying to do that. And one new method we tried this season is with the robot, it maps out where we have the different weeds. So we have a very detailed map of our thistle colonies. And we actually tried this year to send out the robot so it only does a power harrowing in the middle of the season where we have the thistle. So we basically give up these few square meters